Good morning and welcome to the SitRep for today, which is the 8th of December. It is currently 0736. That's 7:30 in the AM, Australian Daylight Savings Time. I hope you're well. Welcome to the SitRep, the situation report where I go through news stories that I've come across in the past 24, 48 hours-ish, maybe a bit longer. And we're going to pull them apart. Really, what this is all about is just giving us a snapshot. This is the sort of stuff that I do, that I'm collecting information over a longer time period. And so putting this information out for y'all to think about, to comment on if you wish, just so we can see what's going on in the world at the moment and try and figure it out. As I like to say, it's all just data points. We're just collecting data here and we're going, all right, once we've got enough data points, we can start to create some sort of predictive model, whether that be within our brains or actually writing this stuff down or graphing it somehow. I'm not graphing it. I'm just collecting it in my head, which then I drink a few beers and whiskeys and forget about. But, that's why I keep doing these. I hope you're all well this morning, feeling good about yourselves and the world. I'm feeling good about you. I don't know how you feel, but I feel good about you because you're listening to this. You're joining me, which means that I can guess that you're a preparedness-minded person. And if you are a preparedness-minded person, if you are someone who is seeking to better yourself so that you are going to be in a better position in the future, then I like you. Peter Rouse, good morning to you on the YouTube, says, get ready for Red Dawn. That's Red Dawn, the OG, not the remake. I did watch the remake a couple of months ago, and it fell a little flat. It felt flat, but I feel like it fell a little flat, like it didn't quite have the punch of the 80s version, as most movies do not when they're remade. Only a matter of time before they try and remake Die Hard, I think, and other such movies. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate it, whether you're watching me on Instagram, on YouTube, or listening to the audio version on the podcast. I appreciate you. I appreciate you very much for joining me. So hopefully I'm not going to waste your time too much. And I will hopefully show you something that you didn't know, or, at least confirm something you already knew. All right, let's jump into it today. No particular order. We're going to go into some green agenda stuff that's really getting my goat this morning. In fact, it got my goat so much that I've started penning an actual, I used to do the YouTube videos where it was like a professional looking thing where I actually have a script and stuff like that. I'm going to do another one, and it's going to be about nihilism and green agenda. I've got to write it though. It's an important one, I think. A coronavirus says, morning Stu, glad to see an uptick in your YouTube views. I haven't, I don't track my, what do you call it? Your statistics and stuff very often. I have a look at it every now and then. I mean, ultimately I'm not here to get subscribes and likes and stuff like that. I'm not here to become like Insta famous or anything. That's not my goal here. I started putting this out because I found myself writing messages about this stuff to a couple of friends daily, and then just thought, if I'm doing this anyway, like I'm looking at this stuff, I'm analyzing this stuff, and then I'm having to send messages here, sending messages there. So I started a Telegram group, and then that got a bit tiresome. So I thought, you know what, it's just easier now for me to actually get up and speak the words. And so that's why I'm doing it. So whether there's, 300,000 or 3 people, we're definitely at one end of that. We're close to the 3. I think we're at 5 now, 5 or 6 people that actually follow me. But, wherever we are on that spectrum, I'm still going to continue doing these. I don't care. And I'm just really, really grateful for every single one of you who join. So that's awesome that more people are listening, because it shows me that more people are out there wanting this information and wanting to be more prepared. And that's really the goal. That's what we should all be about. It's about inspiring and encouraging and teaching others to do this sort of thing. And not from a space of fear either, not sitting there going like, oh, the sky's falling, we have to get ready. Just being like, you know what? It makes sense for us to be more prepared. It makes sense for us to be an asset. It makes sense for us to do the 3 R's as I've come to know it. Reliance, as in self-reliance, responsibility for your own being in the world, and resilience. So making yourself a more resilient human being. And I think if we can do that as an individual, then we can do that in our little family group, and then we can expand that out into our community and then out into the world, I guess. But I don't really care about the world. I care about my community. Peter S says, Green silent on Antarctica recording record cold for month of November. I haven't seen that at all. So that's interesting. It's cold down in Antarctica. Newsflash. It's cold in Antarctica. No, it's record cold apparently. Send me a link to that, Peter, if you have that information. All right, let's jump into it now. This one's interesting. Increase in violence across the spectrum. We are plunging into a space now where what we're going to see is violence increase on the whole. It's going to be a little bit insidious. We're not really going to notice. It's kind of like the boiling water theory, where all the frogs, and it's just going to start to boil up. There's a couple of interesting ones. A fist fight broke out between Turkish lawmakers in their parliament. I think this was last night or the night before. I watched a video, and I didn't snap the video, but it was somewhere, it was an African country, had the same thing happen. And there was at least one other that I saw. So we're seeing parliaments. Imagine a fist fight breaking out in the Australian parliament. I mean, it would be something to behold, being mainly that I don't think most Australian parliamentarians or politicians could fight their way out of a wet paper bag. So it would be lots of this sort of stuff. But this is something that we don't really think about. It does happen. It has happened in the past in other countries. But again, just data points. And I found it interesting because there's been 3 that I've seen recently. Fist fights actually break out with people who are quote unquote diplomats, meaning they're diplomatic in how they actually interact with other humans. Violence is not the answer until it is. Indonesia's parliament votes to ban sex outside of marriage. That's going to affect a lot of Aussies, especially Western Australians who love to go to Bali. And, people go to Bali and they do things. Backpackers go to Bali and they look for other backpackers and they do backpacker stuff. Not anymore. It's illegal. Totally illegal. You could get thrown in jail for having sex outside of marriage. Now, I'm not really that fussed on what your views are on this, whether you think it's right or wrong. This is yet another example, though, of government overreach. It's like, no, we're going to enforce laws upon you. People having sex outside of marriage, like, I can't see that as hurting anyone in of itself. That doesn't seem like something that's like really going to cause anyone any pain. So people should be able to do these sorts of things. I believe, at least, people should be able to do things that don't cause harm to others directly without government interference. But here we have another country cracking down on this sort of stuff. Again, just another data point for governments leaning towards more authoritarian measures across the board. This isn't something like a lockdown measure or something, but it's just yet another example of government overreach within our world. All right, this one was a really interesting one that was sent to me from one of my main sources on Instagram, talking about the UK food supply. Quote, rising costs could result in supply problems for energy-intensive crops, including tomatoes, cucumbers, and pears, which are on track for their lowest yields since records began in 1985. That's pretty disturbing, but this next stuff is even more disturbing. And rationing at supermarkets, as recently experienced with eggs, could also happen. The union said milk prices were also likely fall below the cost of production, and that beef farmers were weighing whether to cut down on the number of cows being bred for slaughter in light of surging costs. This I've been talking about for a long time. Our food system is at a critical point. It is lurching and it is about to collapse. Like, it is very close to the point of collapse where bad things will happen, and not that it will be unsalvageable, but it will be a amount of time before it can be salvaged. So it could be 12 months, it could be 5 years before we can get this sort of system getting up and going again to feed the amount of people that we have on the face of the earth at the moment. Problem is that a human being cannot go 12 months or 5 years without food. So yeah, start preparing now. This is why I continue to say stuff like, hey, make sure your food preps are sorted. Make sure you're going down and you're buying extra stuff at the supermarket every time you go there. You don't have to go. I went to Costco yesterday, and you're walking to Costco, you're going to drop a bit of cash there, but it's payday for me, so I had the ability to do it. Spent a little bit of money, rebuilt some of my stores that have been slowly dwindling, and you've got to keep an eye on those sorts of things. You can't just buy, set and forget. When you got food, you should be rotating it through. You should be eating the stuff that you store, and that means that those stores will go down unless you replenish them. So I just did a little bit of a buyout. It wasn't huge or anything, but a little bit of a buyout. But I understand, something like for a lot of people, and for me a lot of the time, that's not really within the realm of possibility, as in it's cost prohibitive. So buying just a little bit extra every time you go to the supermarket, I think, is a smart idea. You're going to end up building up a good amount of stores over a set amount of time. Don't give in to the fear of the world is going to collapse tomorrow, because if you continue doing that, it's always tomorrow. And then, in 18 months' time, you're sitting there going, man, I didn't prep because I thought things were going to go bad, and now I'm not prepped. Well, if you prep today, even if it's just a tiny bit, and it might not feel like you're doing much, and things go shit tomorrow, well, then you've got that tiny bit more than you would have. But if it doesn't, then you've got that much. And then if it doesn't, next week you've got that much. And next month you've got that much. And next year you've got that much. So make sure you are doing this sort of stuff. And as always, think about growing your own food. Can't stress that enough. Super important. All right, jumping over to stuff that's been happening. I haven't really touched. I sort of dropped that bombshell about the Ukraine thing that's going on, and how the Russian one of the parts of their capability for nuclear strikes being the planes got attacked, the drone attack from Ukraine. And there have been retaliatory attacks from that. One of these attacks that was sent to me from my source here actually plotted where it landed. It hit Moldova. It was extremely close, like within 1 or 2 k's, a few kilometers from Romania. Romania is part of NATO. So again, we're seeing these strikes get really, really close, even sometimes accidentally, slip into NATO area. But this is getting very, very close right now. Any one of these missile attacks slips over into NATO, and the balloons have gone up. That's 99 red balloons, y'all, that are going straight up. It's an 80s reference for you younger folk. You probably wouldn't get it, but it's a German song about war, about nuclear war. Peter Rouse says, we are living in the fourth turning. For those who don't know what that means, there is a book called The Fourth Turning by William Strauss and someone else. I'm blanking. It probably is up there somewhere. But fascinating read. The gist of it is that essentially we go through cycles. The book is, I will say this, I'll preface this, the book is very US centric. So I was talking about US sort of stuff, but I think we can apply it. And it works because there's a universality to it. It works on this 80-year, roughly, give or take, 80-year cycle. We move in 80-year cycles. And within that 80-year cycle, there are 4 distinct phases within an 80-year cycle, being 80 years, roughly, a human life. So that's how it's kind of universal. We go through, see if I can remember this. First 20 years are a high period where everything is great. Neil Howe is the other person. Thank you, Peter Rouse. The high period. Then we have 20 years of awakening where we're going, what's actually going on here? We're starting to reveal things. We're starting to see stuff. Then we have something like dwindling, destruction, falling, or something like that in that third phase where things are starting to go downwards. And then we have the last phase, which is collapse, which is sort of chaos. And it's usually marked by some significant event. Now, events can happen anywhere along here, but they manifest and they are reacted to differently within every phase. So if we had conflict within two countries in the high period, it can kind of be dealt with, and it usually is dealt with. But if we have conflict in that fourth phase, in the collapse phase, it usually goes quite large. So if we think 80 years ago, what was happening 80 years ago? So we rewind the clock, we're looking at 60s. No, we're not. We're looking at 40s. So we're looking at 1940 or 1942 in particular. I don't think anything was happening at that period, was it? 1942? I think there's a little bit of a conflict happening in the world. It was called World War II. Right, so that was the end of the last period. From the US standpoint, please correct me if I get this wrong, but 80 years before that was the Civil War. 80 years, the cycle before that was the War of Independence, I'm pretty sure. So you can see how these cycles, I could have totally cocked that up, but you can see how these cycles work anyway. So we're at that point now, and it's due to come close like maybe 2025, 2028, I think the period was what they were quoting in the book. So Fourth Turning, interesting book, should have a read of it. Anyway, Moldova, big problems there. This is pushing Moldova more and more into wanting to reunify with Romania. So Moldova, there are issues there. They see that they're in the firing line. I don't think I've discussed this before, and it is a really important key point in this conflict here, that Moldova can see that they're next in line for a Russian invasion. They are starting to very, very seriously talk about and move towards reunification with Romania, because they know they can't defend themselves. So they say, hey, you know what? For this next period, and this is serious. This is the top, like their president talking about it, president talking about it, reunification with Romania. I don't know what the implications are there for NATO status, but if they did reunify in this space here, then there is the potential. Then they do get pulled into NATO, and that line then goes a little bit closer. So next time something slips in there, and there's already alleged strikes going on within Moldova, especially when we start to talk about the Transnistria, I can't remember how to pronounce that, area of Moldova, that there are Russians there now fighting a war. So who knows where that's going to go, but that could kick things off as well. What else do we have here? Coincidentally too, Moldova's President Sandu is in Washington at the moment, doing the rounds, talking to all the big heads, the US aid, Nancy Pelosi, IMF, all these sort of guys. This is coming directly from my source here. So laying the groundwork, doing the formalities, doing the talking, shaking hands, kissing babies, making those connections. This is pointing in a very definite direction of where it's heading. So let's see where that one pans out. Peter Rouse says, would need NATO approval vote. I think you would be correct in that. The only question I have about this, Peter, is if Moldova and Romania do reunify, would that curtail that? Would that, because it's not, is Moldova coming into NATO? It's more Moldova coming into Romania. So I'm not sure about where the line is there, but it could potentially, still need a NATO vote. I wouldn't see much resistance to it though, to be honest, within NATO. All right, Poland plans to draft 200,000 for military training next year. Not surprising. This build-up in Poland is forging ahead. Poland is positioning themselves as the next, I don't know what you'd call it, but the vanguard, really, of this war. So that's what Poland is definitely focused on. They are very much facing Russia right now, and they are standing up their military in a big way. Right. Let's jump over to some other interesting stuff. Let's talk about, geez, what have I got here? Let's start on some green agenda stuff. Republicans launch an antitrust investigation into climate-obsessed corporate cartel. So basically, some Republicans have launched a bit of legal action against a committee called Climate Action 100 Plus. Now, what they're saying is that essentially corporations, as they put it, I'll just read what their quote is. Woke corporations are collectively adopting and imposing progressive policy goals that American consumers do not want and do not need. And individual companies' use of corporate resources for progressive aims might violate fiduciary duties and other laws, harming its viability and alienating consumers. Which is something that I've thought about for a while, because I do see. I'm not saying that corporations definitely do this. I mean, they do it, but I don't agree with the way that many corporations do their thing, and especially when it comes to these sort of woke agendas. I'm a consumer, so they're working against my needs and my wants in this case. So I find this one a little bit interesting. I'm like, now we're starting to see a bit of a pushback in this sense here. We're starting to see the pushback on a higher level, not just on a sort of groundswell level, which we've seen in the past, against the kind of wokeism that is happening within corporations at the moment. But we're starting to see actual law being brought into it here. So that one just twigged my interest. I'm like, this is interesting to me, because corporations can do certain things, i.e., Apple can dictate to your phone when it's going to charge your phone. So I can say, hey, cool, I see you plugged your phone in. I'm not actually going to charge it right now. I'm going to charge it later when I deem that it's okay, when we're using a cleaner energy, or when it's a less peak period or something like that. Apple is doing that. And I know Apple's doing that because we're getting reports from Northern Carolina. So the power outages that have been happening in Northern Carolina, and I'm going to try and do an actual video on, not on the power outages, but on some of the experiences that are happening here in this space with this power outage, because it is reflecting what I've been doing with the stories from Kiev. So I'll try and I've got sent a Twitter thread from someone who is in this experience here and how they're actually living and dealing with it. And but this was to reduce your carbon footprint by selectively charging when lower carbon emissions electricity is available. iPhone learns from your daily charging routine so it can reach full charge before you need to use it. So this is coming off the back that they were seeing reports that Apple is throttling charging to phones to assist in climate change goals. All right, so they're saying that climate change is more important than you charging your phone. That makes sense, except these people here are getting in between 10 minutes and 3 hours of energy every 20 to 30 hours. So maybe every 30 hours, right? Every day and a bit, you get 10 minutes of energy, 10 minutes of time to plug your phone in and charge it. And when you do that, Apple says, cool, I see you've plugged in your phone, but I'm not going to charge it right now because it's a peak period and I want to save the climate. So again, linking back to the story that I was talking about before, this is an example of corporations doing things that don't necessarily make sense or that I would agree with. And so maybe we should be pushing back against this sort of stuff. You can turn this off, by the way, if you go into settings, battery health and charging, and turn off clean energy charging. So if you want to turn that off on your phone, very easy to do still. All right. Let's talk about EVs. Let's talk about EVs in Europe now. I've got so many stories today and not much time, so I'm going to try and whip through this. All right. European Parliament requires that by 2026, there should be at least one charging station for electric cars every 60 kilometers on all major road routes in the EU. In the Czech Republic, however, this plan will probably fail, according to Czech Ministry of Transport. So again, an example of the disunited area that is the European Union. We've got another country coming out and saying, hey, look, these goals, these green goals that you've got, they're fine, they're great, I love it, not going to work. All right, there's a little thing called reality, a hard friggin' reality, and we can't achieve this. We just cannot achieve this. It's not going to happen. It will be ignored wholesale. I can guarantee the European Parliament will continue down this plan and go, no, we're going to have these power stations every 60 Ks. That's how we're going to get across the problem of distance when it comes to charging your vehicle. Haven't got across the problem of time yet. Still takes time to charge that vehicle, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about that yet. Science, that is capital T, the capital S, science trademark. We will find a way. It will save us. It always does. But yeah, rumblings here. We're seeing the pushback against these sorts of ideas. And again, I just want to stress that I'm definitely not against this. If there was an EV out there, I would definitely grab it. If it had the distance, the capacity, and the charging times were lower, and Australia was even remotely set up for that, then I would probably go towards this. But it's not. None of those things are there at the moment. So I just think it's farcical that they're pushing this sort of stuff. I did say this. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and we're talking about what's the next story that I'm about to drop on you, which is a very frustrating one. And they said, these things that must be getting decided by people who live in cities, because none of this would work out in a rural area that like we live in. Just not going to work at all. And I said, yeah, they are. They are decided by people who are detached from actual reality, from actual nature, from the harsh reality of the universe, of the world, of physics. These people are totally detached from it. They're just seeing another world and they're going, yes, this is what we operate in, so here's where we can make our rules. Peter Rouse says the batteries are more environmentally damaging than a diesel car. And like even the slightest bit of research will show you this fact. And that's the battery itself, all right? And what do you do with that battery when its life is over? Where does it go? It doesn't just evaporate into like butterflies and rainbows. It has to go somewhere. It has to get stored or broken down. The way the elements are dug out of the ground to build these batteries, I would really recommend you research that, because it's not very good for the earth or for the people who do it. And if we change that, then it would be utterly cost prohibitive for us to go anywhere near this sort of technology. Peter S. says there's only one charging station in all of Queenstown, yet Jacinta is telling everyone to go get an electric car. That's I find that very amusing, and yeah, it makes sense too. All right, here's this. I got sent this from a mate. This comes from a document called "The Future of Urban Consumption in a 2.5 Degree World." So they're talking about cities. I think it came from the UK, some UK think tank and group of people that got together, and they put out this document. And Australia is like, yeah, this sounds great. We're going to sign up to it. Apparently, Labor, Liberal, Greens, and Teals have signed up to it. Here's a little extract from it that I want you to wrap your head around. Implications for Aussies here. Just a tiny bit of an extract from it. I'm going to try and go do an entire story or do an entire video, sorry, just on this. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to read all, I think it's 180 pages of it, analyze it, and give you my thoughts on it. But here's a little snapshot. Sorry, it's very small, so I've got to lean in and read it. My eyes are not so good anymore. Okay. They want to, when it comes to vehicles, they've got two targets. They've got a progressive target, which is like, this is going to happen. And then they've got a more extreme target, what they call the ambitious target. This is by 2030, all right? 2030, 8 years' time, this is what they want. Car ownership, down to 190 cars per 1,000 people. Okay, now this is aimed at cities, so that's fine. In a rural area, this will not work. Will not work. That's the progressive target. Ambitious target, 0. 0 cars per 1,000 people. 0 cars at all. Good luck with that. Reduced number of flights. You cannot fly around the world. You're going to get one short-haul return flight less than 1,500 kilometers every 2 years. You'll get that. So if you've got family, if you live on the East Coast and you've got family over in Perth, not going to happen. You can fly some way, but maybe you're going to have to drive the rest. The ambitious target is one short haul flight every 3 years. Meat, this one hit me right in the friggin' guts because I'm like, nah. Like the green agenda saying people shouldn't have dogs, and I said that's my line, that's my hill that I'm going to die on, and it still is. You're not taking my dogs from me. Meat is also another one. 16 kilograms of meat per person per year. There's no specifics on this, so I'm going to read into it more. What do you mean by 16 kilos? Is 16 kilos of red meat, 16 kilos of all meat, 16 kilos, does this include seafood? What are you talking about here? Anyway, 16 kilos, that's what their progressive target is. In 8 years' time, that will get down to 16 kilos. What's their ambitious target? 0. 0 kilos of meat. And to that, I say, oh, fuck you. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Dietary changes also, this goes into dairy. So they're saying 90 kilo of dairy consumption, milk or derivatives equivalent per person per year. So 90 kilos per person per year. That's the progressive target. The ambitious target, a 0. Donuts, nothing. What are you going to eat? Like, for somebody who is of a Northern European heritage, i.e. me, for hundreds of thousands of years, we have consumed meat. For what we know, at least thousands of years, we have consumed dairy products. All right, this is what my body was evolved to consume. And now you're going to tell me that I can't have those things. Well, I'm going to kick in another little evolutionary theory there for you called survival of the fittest. Come at me, bro. Molon labi, as the Greeks, I think, originally said, but that is a Latin term, which roughly translated means come and take it. Good luck to you is all I can say. Reduced number of clothing items as well from 8 down to 8 items of clothing per year that you're allowed. But the ambitious goal is 2. So you just decide, what do you want? A sock and a pair of underwear? Or a hat and a glove? That's all you get per year. All right. Next year, maybe you can get the left glove, but this year only the right. You're not getting both. It's not going to happen. Not if you want that hat. So yeah, righto. Renee C on YouTube says, hell no. And I'm with you. I'm with you on this one. This is the line. This is the hill that I'll absolutely die on. But go get your own meat. Think about this. We need to take control of our own food and our own systems as much as possible. And this is why. Because the communist green agenda is going to take everything off us. And this is why at the start I was talking about, like, you can't have sex before marriage in Indonesia now. It might not affect you at all, might not seem like a big thing, but this is what I'm talking about, that governments want to tell us what to do, how we should live our lives. That's not the government's role. All right. The government is to kind of protect us from higher levels. The government is maybe to look at broader things, but not to tell individuals how to live. I don't think that is the right way to go about this. Surely this will piss off the consumer masses. Yeah, I don't know how you could possibly think you could achieve this and not entirely destroy industries, especially within Australia. Our meat industry is huge. I don't know how you can get away with that. What, are we just going to convert everyone into grasshopper farmers now so we can eat wholesale grasshopper mush for our protein? Not going to work. Peter Rouse says they're doing that with air travel right now in NZ with bad batch of aviation fuel here. Side note, I've seen 3, 1 on the news, 2 anecdotally, of things that have gone wrong, and it's in and around the biggest airline in Australia, Qantas. One was mishandling of luggage. So there's video coming out of Qantas people smashing luggage. Duh, that happens. And 2 was from people that I know one was trying to get a flight from one city to another in Australia, had 3 flights in a row knocked back. Tried to get on one, didn't work. Got him out into the terminal, onto the airstrip. Had to go back in a bus. So second one didn't work. Waited for a third. That got cancelled as well. Didn't happen. Friends going overseas to live got pushed back. Then they got over there, no luggage, but they got over there eventually. So I'm looking at this and going, interesting timing that all these things are going wrong with airlines right now. That people are starting to complain wholesale about airlines right now, and they want us to stop flying. Oh, just stop flying because you're going to save the planet, but also the planes don't work anyway. Interesting coincidence. France has actually banned short-haul domestic flights because climate change. There you go. Polestar, which is a company I think that's making EVs, is going to charge $17.50 per horsepower for boost in their package. So if you want your car to have more horsepower, each horsepower measure that you're going to get is going to cost you $17.50. All right. I'm going to cut it there because there's still heaps more stories and I'm out of time. I've got to actually work today where I've got to teach an online course. So, and I still have to get more coffee into me. So I'm going to cut it there, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Again, this isn't about the doom and gloom. Let's not focus in on the world is shit. It's just like, all right, I can see what's going on in the world right now. Light a fire under your fucking ass and start getting yourself ready. Start becoming more self-reliant. Start becoming more resilient. Start becoming more responsible for your own being in this existence. Love you, gang. Thank you very much, as always, for joining. Really appreciate it. If you've got any questions, shoot them through to me. If you've got any interesting news stories and stuff like that, shoot it through to me as well. But keep prepping. Get out in the garden if you can. Renee C says, learn wild foraging skills too. Absolutely. But until next time, thank you very much, and Semper Paratus.